Recent technological innovation in long-term fire retardant has made it possible for one application to protect people's homes from wildfires that will continue to remain effective even after a significant rain event. Today, we're speaking with Wes Bolsen, Director of Wildfire Prevention and Protection at Perimeter Solutions, about phos-chek Fortify long-term fire retardant and how more homeowners and organizations are starting to use it to protect their property from wildfire. That and more on this episode of Solutions That Save, a fire safety podcast from Perimeter Solutions. Hello, I'm your host, Dan Green. Welcome to Solutions That Save, a fire safety podcast from Perimeter Solutions, helping save property, natural resources, critical infrastructure, and lives. The U.S. Forest Service and other fire safety agencies started using phos-chek long-term fire retardant in 1963. Dropping the red solution from planes to prevent the spread of active wildfires. There is now a ground-based variety of phos-chek called phos-chek Fortify that is formulated to provide extended protection on surfaces where it's applied. In this episode of Solutions That Save, Wes Bolsen talks with us about phos-chek Fortify, how it's being used to protect lives and property, and an interesting project in Santa Barbara, California. Before we get started, though, Wes gives us a brief background on his career.
Yeah, I've actually been around the renewable energy environment space for about the last 15 years with some renewable fuels companies and then an ag animal nutrition company, but really through some of the breakthrough technology that was coming out of Stanford University and MIT a few years ago, learned about really interesting technology we'll talk about today on the prevention and protection industry. And so I joined in and was the president and CEO of a company called Tech before I joined Perimeter Solutions with them acquiring the company. So it really came through an interest of some of my friends out in the Bay Area, and then joining in, building the company, and then becoming part of Perimeter Solutions about 18 months ago.
You hinted at this in your first answer. So tell us about phos-chek Fortify long-term fire retardant. What helps it have durability for what could be an entire fire season with a single application?
Yeah, I mean, the really interesting thing about the phos-chek Fortify technology is both the adherence and the durability. Perimeter Solutions has had long-term retardant technology well proven for decades, but really the new innovation behind the Fortify long-term retardant is the adherence to vegetation. So it helps to coat the vegetation even better. And it helps to have durability through weathering, through rain, through wind. And that's a real benefit when you're looking at what could be a single annual application of long-term fire retardant that helps to prevent ignitions and then protect assets for the whole season. And so really it's technology and patents that came out of Stanford University and MIT that are the core underlying piece of this technology, mixed with kind of decades-long reliability and quality products in long-term retardants. And so Fortify is a little mix of breakthrough cross-linked polymers mixed with known, proven long-term retardant technology.
So Wes, you touched upon Perimeter Solutions phos-chek technology, which has been around for 60 years. And you mentioned how phos-chek Fortify has improved durability and adherence. How else is phos-chek Fortify different from the red solution that you see drop from planes during active wildfires to prevent their spread?
The really interesting thing is most people think that the red fire retardant, the standard phos-chek products that we're using with the United States Forest Service or the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, that the red is really a critical part of that. Interestingly, I didn't know this until after I joined the company. The red is simply a fugitive dye. It actually helps the pilots just see where they have applied that long-term retardant. Another thing I didn't really understand was the standard red product was being dropped a lot of times right ahead of the fire to help render the vegetation non-flammable. So the fire would move into it, and you hear about fire lines being dropped. And that's where the pilots are seeing where they're dropping. They make sure they're dropping and connecting the lines, and it made a lot of sense to me. For the Fortify technology, right now, phos-chek Fortify is a white, ground-based product, and it can be used for both prevention and protection. But if you're not dropping it from an aircraft, you don't need to see where the last aircraft dropped it. You're literally driving along. And so I think a couple big differences is one, most of the time when you're dropping the phos-chek red products out of air tankers, you're dropping a lot of product because it's in an emergency. It's in a suppression mode. When you're doing phos-chek Fortify, this is a product which is really about both prevention and protection. You're doing it well ahead of fire season. You're doing it well ahead of fires, potentially going into a high risk area. We call them tier 2 and tier 3 high risk fire areas. And so we can be applying product around homes, along roadsides, underneath utility lines. We can be doing a lot of things ahead of the season that you don't have then the red product that is being applied, and then Fortify can have that season-long protection with potentially just a single application.
As the director of wildfire prevention and protection, you're meeting with utilities, railroads, state and federal transportation agencies, homeowners, and others to talk about the importance of being proactive with long-term retardant solutions before the wildfire season even starts. Are you seeing them start to take action?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the utilities and the railroads, transportation agencies all start to say this is something that we need to start utilizing. People want to utilize new tools and especially ones that can help prevent ignitions. That's always the number one aspect of this is if we can help to prevent ignitions, our fire personnel will be able to respond to the ones that we couldn't prevent. In the insurance industry, what you're seeing is protection around homes in high-risk areas and homeowners being protected. And I'm starting to see that as it's an added long-term retardants and phos-chek Fortify really being an added layer of protection, Dan. We always want the homeowners to do fire-wise approaches, defensible space around their home. And then you come in and you treat the light, flashy vegetation, the things that would burn with just those embers coming in. About 90% of homes burn from embers blowing in, not actually fire going over the top of the home. And so we're treating the vegetation, we're treating what they call the ladder fuel that takes fire from the ground and gets up into the canopy of the trees. And so we're seeing, long-term retardants start to be adopted as a new and accepted tool for that. Same way goes with why the utility companies are looking at long-term retardants and starting to apply underneath the lines, around the poles, around high-value utility infrastructure. If you had a power line come down because of a tree, because of a high wind event, you're looking at that sparking and arcing in the grass and in the vegetation underneath those lines. If we preventatively treated the underneath the lines and around the poles, that's going to help prevent that ignition from starting, or it at least slows it depending on how you've applied. Same thing, utilities have been doing vegetation management and have been doing a tremendous amount of work in their wildfire mitigation plans. Again, long-term retardants are now becoming an additional tool that utilities, railroad, and other companies and industries are starting to adopt that really adds that layer of protection and helps to prevent the ignitions, number one. And then number two, protect their utility, railroad, or other communications assets.
And you and your team have been doing a lot of work this year because this wildfire season has been highly active in the Western United States. Can you talk about a few of the preventative long-term retardant applications that Perimeter Solutions has completed to help with wildfire prevention and protection this year?
Yeah, Dan, I'll start with, it has been a very active 2021 fire season, and obviously we're still in the middle of it. But where we've seen some real major wins are, starting with some of the protection that we saw with railroad companies on wooden bridge structures and the trestles along areas where the Dixie Fire, the Caldor Fire, some of the things in California have been approaching. But really, we're looking at across the entire Western United States and then other areas around the globe that we've been deploying the technology. We just finished up helping to protect a number of homes on behalf of one of the largest home insurance companies in the United States up in South Lake Tahoe. We've already protected around 250 homes where the fire was coming right into them. And it's been seen as a major win inside of that insurance company. And then I would say utility. We were really seeing adoption by some of the major utility companies that are understanding and know they need to use all available resources to help prevent and protect. The final one I think I'd mention is really some of the roadside ignitions. We had a couple of fire safe councils in California, one being in San Luis Obispo County, another being down the Southwest Riverside Fire Safe Council, understanding that their greatest risk was on roadside ignitions coming into their community. And the best thing that a fire safe council could do is preventatively apply the phos-chek Fortify in that 10, 20 feet along the roadside leading into their community. And we've seen some great wins already with where we've applied. And I see that continuing to expand to other, the departments of transportation, both federal and state, for what we could be doing to help prevent roadside ignitions, where in the state of California, about 80% of ignitions are adjacent to a roadside. And that's a tremendous number that even if we could reduce in half the number of ignitions adjacent to roadsides, we could double the response time to the other fires.
And a couple of months ago, you and Perimeter Solutions were involved in a pretty interesting project at the Reagan Ranch in Santa Barbara. Will you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure, Dan. I mean, the Reagan Ranch was an extremely exciting project. That's a 680-acre ranch, kind of was known as the Western White House, where President Reagan actually ran country from for almost one of his 8 years in the office. The greatest threat to that kind of national historical site is fire threat, where they're up above Santa Barbara and have had fire approaching the Reagan Ranch before. And so we were able to go up and really do a tremendous application around the property, around the buildings, using that clear kind of white ground-based retardant so that you're able to help protect that. And the managers and the Young America's Foundation, who helps take care of the Reagan Ranch, were thrilled with our partnership with them to be protecting that. And we look forward to protecting more things like that, Dan, where we're talking about universities, we're talking about high value industrial sites that we could be protecting. And I think it's going to start catching on as people understand what we can do with long-term retardants in a prevention and protection manner.
And where do you see the preventative use of phos-chek Fortify having the biggest impact in helping to prevent ignitions and protect property?
Yeah, like I was talking about a little bit earlier, Dan, if we can help to prevent ignitions from starting, the greatest number of ignitions may be coming from roadsides. And so that's an easy place to start. Spraying the vegetation, potentially difficult to reach vegetation, keeping that vegetation in place. There's some horrible things environmentally by stripping out the vegetation or scraping it to the bare mineral soil with erosion and mudslides and even human health, issues with taking and stripping that vegetation away or spraying other chemicals that could be harmful. What we're able to do is keep that vegetation in place on those roadsides, treat it with a long-term retardant, and have a safe season, if you will, where those ignitions are starting. I think the second one is they may not be the greatest number of ignitions, but they've caused some of the greatest damage in the Western U.S. are utility wildfire ignitions. And that's why that's one of our top priorities, is partnering with many of the public and private utilities to be treating under the poles, underneath the lines around those high value utility infrastructure. And then finally, I'd probably finish up with the railroad, in their right of way along the areas that are in high risk areas, metal on metal scraping and having sparks come off. We always want to prevent those ignitions where hot work is being performed, welding and other things out in the field. Preventing the ignitions is always number one. And then number two, like I say, is protecting assets like the insurance company and others are doing to help protect homeowners and lives and memories that are in each of those homes, Dan.
Wes, can you talk about the environmental safety of applying long-term retardants proactively in the testing that it has already gone through?
Sure, Dan. Long-term retardants have been one of the more tested chemicals going out into the environment. The U.S. Forest Service takes the lead as the federal agency to run what they call the Qualified Products List. And many people rely on the quote QPL for knowing that a product is safe and effective. There's been full environmental impact statements written, and that other NEPA and CEQA rely on for knowing that long-term retardants can go out in a preventative and proactive manner, as well as, of course, in the suppression and dropping with approaching fires. So any of the products that are on the QPL end up going through a fish toxicity or aquatic toxicity, knowing that it's safe in that environment. It goes through mammalian toxicity and understanding the safety that it would have. And that would include understanding any levels that would be harmful at all for pets or children. Or, when you really break it down, what a long-term retardant is is a very low grade fertilizer, like what you'd use in your garden. So it's a not a very scary product. It coats that vegetation, and if you got a little bit on you, you just wash it off the same way if you got a little garden fertilizer on you. And so it's a very safe but also very effective product. And it's why we've stuck with long-term retardants having a primary basis of phosphates, a standard fertilizer, and not some other exotic chemicals or things that could be even harmful to the environment that people have tested in the past, but it's not been successful. So any of the products go through the durability testing that we do internally, but as well as fire retardant effectiveness testing. It's a years-long process to be able to have a product get on the federal qualified products list and be able to be out in the environment.
And is there anything that we haven't covered today, Wes, that you'd like to talk about before we let you go?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of the topics. I really think, Dan, that over the next 2 to 3 years, it will become a common thing for preventative, proactive application of long-term retardants, ground-based, precision applied, white, if you will, retardant that's able to go out. And I think it'll become just something that's standard. I don't think that many people know about it right now, but I think in 2 or 3 years, I think it'll be one of those situations where people say, how could you not utilize a new proven, safe, and effective tool like this? And so we look forward to working with lots of different industries, mining all the way through to communications companies or even oil platforms where small fires are starting. We have the ability to put these products out, Dan, in almost any industry. And we look forward to working with our partners across the US and around the globe as we go forward. So thanks so much for inviting me today to be part of this.
Thank you, Wes. Want to learn more about solutions that save property, natural resources, critical infrastructure, and lives? Visit us at perimetersolutions.com. That's perimeter-solutions.com. See how our products impact critically important issues of life, issues where there often is no room for error and the job doesn't offer second chances. Please join us again for another episode of Solutions That Save, a fire safety podcast from Perimeter Solutions.